Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Don't Forget the Human, the show where we talk about tech, but always bringing it back to the humans doing the work. I'm Brittany Chiang, the CEO of Flatter Incorporated, where we're building federal technology with a focus on the human workforce. And that's exactly what we're digging in today. Today, we're going to talk about agentic AI. What does that mean? What does it mean to supervise non-human AI agents? So we're gonna dig into what if the AI is your intern and not your boss? What does that look like? Joining me is Lucas Flatter, my partner in tech at Flatter Inc., and someone who's not only coding with AI but coaching it and solving solutions for the federal government. So we're breaking down how to apply workforce development principles to digital agents and balancing autonomy with oversight. And what does it mean to design for task level agency without giving away the whole shop? So, Lucas, if you could open us up with some definitions around what is agentic AI, what can it do, how are we using it, that would be great.
Sure. So pretty much in the last couple of years, we've been using these AI systems that are, some people might say that, like, call them LLMs, large language models, or chatbots, or, you know, in the form of Copilot, ChatGPT, what have you. But we're looking at more emerging features in these platforms, such as like, looking at deep research where you can kind of say, oh, I want to look at this topic, give me everything on the internet that you can find on this topic, where I don't need to tell AI, hey, look at this website and then summarize it, look at this website and then summarize it. It's more of, here's a goal, it might be a little bit ambiguous. Come back to me when you've completed that goal. So that's kind of like we've seen, like, okay, we're stepping into more agentic territory. But I think where we're going to be talking about today, and like where it's going to go in the near future, is these agents being able to use all the same tools and interact in the same environments as an employee, or as you might with interacting in your job. So if I go on my computer and pull up, Chrome, my web browser, my email, um, Teams, and I start interacting with other employees and, trying to accomplish goals with all these different tools, you can think of the agentic in the future being able to do all of those same things. So instead of saying, like, okay, give me data that I'm going to then bring into Excel, you could say, hey, just open my Excel and act, under my authority. I'll give you an ambiguous goal, like, hey, I need to work on the next 30 days of marketing for an application, and maybe it creates several artifacts and puts them in the right SharePoint folders, and everything that you might expect from, like, a trained employee that's interacting in the system.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a moment and make a pitch for the human, right? So I think when we hear agentic AI, we think, big tech is replacing human workforce and they're going to get rid of humans and replace them with bots. And I just want to make an argument that we're actually empowering human expertise. And let's say a cancer researcher, for example, is out there trying to find a cure for cancer. And maybe they have one research assistant that's able to support their mission. And they're doing really niche research. Well, now that expertise of that scientist who only has 8 hours of work a day, he or she can sit and kind of write out their task. And if I had 10 people working for me, what would that look like? And where would I put them to work? And then new lines of work emerge that you didn't have the bandwidth and resources to do before. So, maybe you had 10 courses of action, but could only research three. Now with agentic AI, you can set out those research agents to research all of the 10 possibilities and then come back with insights. And Firstly, I think that requires a level of really high human expertise and subject matter expertise. And I don't think that's going away, our reliance on a human's expertise. And then coupled with technology, you can double and triple their output and effectiveness. And that's what I'm really excited about on our team is not reducing the workforce, but empowering them to be much more effective and creative with their time.
Yeah, and just yeah, like maybe things that were nice to have, like, things that are beautiful and fun to interact with, maybe those become more like within reach. You don't have to be this huge conglomerate like Apple to create like a friendly, human-centered interface.
So pull the thread on that supervisory duty of the human in supervising AI agents. What's that look like, and what does that delegation look like?
Um, I think, and this is kind of getting at what you're saying again, like where does the human come in? And it you can be, a micromanager, or you can be somebody that's empowering other people. So in the same way, maybe I'm going to ask an AI agent to create, four different versions of this application, but I want to be very nitpicky on like, oh, I want this screen to look this way. I want this screen to look this way. Um, you can kind of imagine yourself maybe creating a bottleneck there where we're not really taking full advantage of the autonomy, or, I'm not doing something in parallel because I'm kind of just like, controlling maybe every little aspect. So I
Hmm.
think, yeah, like we as humans, we need to think about ways that we're like taking advantage of that parallel processing, but it's hard
Mm.
to imagine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So kind of being okay with the output that the AI gives you in an automated fashion takes a bit of adjustment or um, because if you can automate something and you have the 90% solution and you can just move forward with it, but if you really want that last 10%, it's going to take maybe 5 times as much energy or coding. I'm sure there's a concept for that in agile development, the last 10 yards.
Yeah, I think it's like Pareto's law or something like that. But yeah, like the last 10% takes 80% of the time or something like that.
Exactly. If we can learn to be okay with the 90%, I think AI can do a lot of that work for us. One of the areas that has been kind of a net new area that we just didn't have resources for in the past is when we're submitting a federal proposal to the government. We do a lot of due diligence on what are the government's hot button issues and how can we deliver the best solution to them. But a blind spot or an area that was always under resourced was the competitive what a competitor would do to attack us or how they would win against us. And that's an area where we've been able to commit some resources where we weren't in the past. So really excited to see how some of that competitive analysis might help both increase and improve the solutioning we're able to provide to the federal government, but also make our potentially increase our win rate.
Yeah, and I think yeah, we talk a lot about like, is this possible now that we have these tools to go after this work? And it's not just like, oh, let's go after everything that we can possibly do, but what capability will we have after winning this work that then we can build on, and kind of, you know chicken or the egg situation where we need the experience in some cases to go after it. So
So explain to me the biggest differences between an Excel macro or a static workflow automation and what technology is available to us today and how it's different.
um I think I mentioned earlier, like, maybe more ambiguous goals. So, a macro or an automation, like, I think we would maybe have called it like robotic process automation, or, taking several clicks and repeating them with different data sets. That can be really powerful on like, I've done one thing and I want to do it 1,000 times. Um, but what we're kind of looking at is more like holistic, like tell me, let me just go into like a completely different domain, like create a movie for me, right? Like, so that would entail like writing a screenplay and creating the imagery and, maybe even making marketing materials and sending emails to people. It's things that, you know, things that require thought and agency. Like, I don't want to be like circular, but agency and like decision making and
Mm.
even knowledge in order to accomplish, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then at some point, a human is supervising, kind of overseeing the steps of, okay, you've written the script, you've assigned cast members, and at some point, I, as the human, need to say, good for these cast members. Now, yes, you have permission to reach out to them, or, actually swap the lead for this other person who I had in mind, and then go forth with your plans. Um, so, what's that engagement look like, and how do we not, as humans, become the bottleneck, but you're still benefiting from the agentic contribution?
Yeah, I think this is a great transition into this idea of like what does one agent know that maybe another agent doesn't know, or what does one agent specialize in? So maybe I've spent a whole lot of time, talking to the casting agent and telling it, these are my preferences, these are the kinds of, roles that I need filled by these kinds of actors and maybe it knows enough to where I kind of trust it to make those casting decisions. So but maybe I don't want it to have anything to do with the script because I've also talked to the script agent about here's my favorite storytelling, I like these mythic, epic stories and with like emotional resolutions and then maybe I've been training it on, all my favorite movies to write the perfect script. That
Mm.
doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of crossover with like the perfect casting and maybe it would start to kind of muddy the waters if like one agent is making all of these decisions and it makes it hard for me to, you know, I can influence each individual agent at a certain point, but um, it'd be hard for me to say like, okay, this is the perfect like movie creation agent that just can do everything. Um, so we're kind of starting to think about this idea of like, what do the agents know and what do they specialize in?
Yeah, so if I hear you correctly, it sounds like what we're talking about is agentic checks and balances, to where not every check and balance has to be a human clicking approve. It could be that one agent has the task of writing the script and they're really optimistic and they have this whimsical persona. And then you've got another that, is a 40-year English major and he's gonna highlight every inconsistency in the script and underline and bold and change everything. And then you have another that's like marketing focused that brings it to market. But if you combine all those tasks into one role, it would be confused and it wouldn't know. It would be worse at every single one of those other steps. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think yeah, and in like a summary of that, it's like conflicting goals and conflicting rewards, and so the maybe you even have like I think you mentioned like a marketing agent that my goal is to sell this to as many people as possible. Well, that might conflict with the whimsical like script writing. So you know, in I want this person to fight tooth and nail for what their job is and what their goals are. I don't want them to say, "Okay, I'm just gonna roll over and listen to the script agent."
So then do you have an agent manager that his job is P&L and telling which agents activities are approved and disapproved, huh?
Yeah, and I guess you can think about where you might want to fit in and maybe it's just where you prefer to fit in or maybe you do want that completely oversight role where it's like, okay, at the end of the day, I'm going to figure out the conflicts between these agents.
And this is where I really err on customization, because you, Lucas Flatter, have amazing strengths and you've lived a lot of use cases, and I have different strengths. And we can build an agentic workforce that complements our human strengths on the team, not just the agents you're building, of what you're saying of where does the human interject into the process, where do they approve tasks or hold them back and say don't spend any more time on this. But it's really kind of a beautiful way for me to really think about my own personal strengths and what I should be spending time on and what's worth investing a little bit in my weaknesses, and having, 3 or 4 agents doing those things that not only I'm not very good at, but I don't like to do, or they take a particular energy toll on me, or whatever that case might be. But I think it is empowering to build that workday that you really enjoy participating in.
Yeah, yeah, I like that idea of like, maybe, yeah, like it's like I'm going to offboard the overarching decision making just because, it's not something that maybe I can't even really tell like if my decisions are successful or not on that level, but I can really see my own influence, when I go, oh, I'm going to help the code writing agents instead of helping the marketing agents or things like that.
So what about risks? What risks do you think organizations face by either not participating at all in agentic AI, or going too far, not trying to automate everything? What do those two ends of the spectrum look like?
Um, I think maybe let me start with like the going too far aspect where I can just imagine, I'm telling like an AI system with a bunch of different agents to create an application and at the end of the day, it might not fit, my organization or it might not fit um my vision or just the idea that I've offboarded everything and then now there's no flavor of, Lucas or there's no flavor of Flatter Inc. as an organization. Um, I can see that happening where, maybe even it creates like 10 different versions and like all 10 of them are slightly off. And if I was, more in the mix and influencing things, it would create a better product.
That makes sense. And then the risk of not participating, I think about um, just kind of getting behind, that cancer researcher not being empowered by 3 research assistants, and not um, being able to run analytics on that data and interpret them, and curate the best testing they can, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's some really neat opportunities for, scientific advancement, technology advancement, learning, growth. Um, I think we're going to see an explosion of activity happening, and I, for one, want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And like, yeah, thinking about like just in a business sense, like what are the barriers to entry of this industry and they're lowered by tools like that Microsoft provides and that that Google provides and Amazon and if I just say okay, I'm just going to do things the way I'm doing things, then the barriers are going to get lowered and lowered and lowered by any tools. And so how do I use my industry experience, my medical degree, my creativity to use the same tools as somebody that's just entering the market, right?
Or pour gasoline on a 30-year expertise, you know? I really think it's important that although we can start at an entry level and be empowered by AI, we need to bring ourselves along in the knowledge gain and in the expertise, and somehow internalize the learning. And I do wonder if that learning is your external brain, that's your GPT, that's been through and seen so much with you that you become kind of coupled with it, or um, do you think the human is able to kind of take on that learning and have it resident, in their body to share with the world? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, that's almost like yeah, like we're getting to like yeah, well, how does this change us and do we change or the world just changes around us kind of thing and I can't really say for sure. I mean, you definitely learn while you're using the tools, but even things like, hey, take this document and summarize it. I'm not going to get the same insight as if I read it myself, not necessarily worse, but just different. Like, maybe, while you read it yourself, your son jumped into the room, like you just mentioned, and then that colored your experience. And, you know, it's the whole like, we don't know what we don't know kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just an interesting question for me, particularly. So I started this Don't Forget the Human topic with the intention of writing a blog without the use of AI assistance whatsoever. And I've missed a month now. And I sat down and tried to write it, and it was very, very difficult to conceive, like sitting and writing 3 pages without going to GPT, without getting AI's assistance whatsoever. So I think it happens faster than we realize, that reliance on the technology shuts down our tolerance for doing other tasks. And I think some of that's good, right? Some of that's healthy. I don't need to sit in Microsoft Outlook and click around on calendar invitations for 4 hours a day. That's something I'm happy to leave behind. But there's the things that are forming, like writing a journal entry, calling someone and making a personal call. Those things stay with us, and I think we benefit from over time.
Yeah, I think like it just made me think like, don't forget the human, like as a human, like don't forget that you need these quiet times and you need that like idea of, oh, this isn't all about productivity, we're not machines.
Yeah, this is about us and our purpose in being on this earth, and what we're here for, and how we want to spend our time. So I'm excited about this. What is the future of this going to look like? What's If you have a crystal ball, what do you see?
um I think one thing that comes to mind, and this, might seem like kind of non sequitur, but like if the quality of the work is kind of more like of a done deal, like okay, the code's going to be excellent, even if it doesn't, match me perfectly, maybe I can just like run through more iterations, so like eventually it just works like just perfectly eventually, and with enough you know tweaking. But then I might be thinking about, okay, how much is Google charging me? And on their back end, how much energy are they using? And thinking about, you know, do we need to move our office to somewhere with like hydroelectric power, or like where are we getting all of this? Where is the resource coming from if it's no longer like knowledge based, but it's like energy based or like compute based, or you know, I don't know. It's a little sci-fi.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But hey, as much as we hear about all these ideas from sci-fi that are here in reality today, I think we need to be ready for it. And if it's possible, I think it's going to happen. Well, I think that's all we have for today, huh?
Yeah, I like thinking about, what do these agents know? What are their areas of expertise? And all of that kind of gets me wanting to do something creative now.
Yeah, let's get to it. I have some ideas I want to tackle this week as well. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Don't Forget the Human. Today we talked about what it means to manage an agentic AI as if it's a part of your team. And the key is whether it's helping you to move faster with clarity or just adding to the noise. So appreciate you tuning in, and look forward to talking next week.
Thanks.